Hi, and welcome to Mark's Motivational Podcast for this Tuesday episode, another Author's Tuesday. So tonight I'm delighted to be joined by another author, Rob McDermott. So it's great to have you on, Rob. Thanks a lot for joining me.
Thanks for the opportunity, Mark. Good to talk to you.
Yeah, great stuff, great stuff. So we'll probably start the podcast off tonight. Your book is called Jonestown. Would you like to tell the listeners a bit about it and where they can buy it, please?
Yeah. Jonestown is the book. First of all, a bit about it. It's set in America.
Yeah.
It's contemporary America, and it's set in a gated community. So really prestigious, sort of affluent people who are constantly trying to one-up themselves. One another, I should say. Sort of that's the Jonestown bit of it. So keeping up with the Joneses.
Yeah.
But also Jonestown is a famous sort of reference to the cult of Jim Jones and what happened in Guyana in 1978. And part of the story revolves around this community and its charismatic leader, which, in fairness, is it's a sort of a subtle sort of take on Trump's America.
Yeah.
And that's part of the story, but the narrator of the story, who tells us right from the start that he's kind of making stuff up, and part of the reason I wrote the book was to explore that style of writing, the unreliable narrator. He, through the course of telling what's going on in Jonestown, starts to reveal about what happened to his family and why his family fell apart, and the various tragedies and sort of bad luck that followed him, because his sister, who he's estranged from, is convinced that he is cursed. So there's kind of, there's a lot going on in the story. I recently had somebody review it, and they sent me, they haven't written the review yet, but they sent me a message saying they had finished it and said, it's kind of a cross between J.G. Ballard's Cocaine Nights and Desperate Housewives.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a good thing or not, but it certainly has that sort of the Desperate Housewives. I've only ever watched a couple of episodes, but it definitely has that sort of the dynamic, everyone trying to sort of get the better of everyone else. Lots of secrets, community with a lot of secrets.
Yeah.
And I suppose Cocaine Nights is more about that sort of idea of that sort of unreliable narrator making up the story and trying to sort of keep us guessing.
Yeah.
And it's available on Book Depository.
Yeah.
The usual outlets, Amazon. It's with an American publisher. So Barnes and Noble and that. But it'll be in Dubray Books in Black Rock.
I saw that. Yeah.
In a couple of weeks. It's just the manager. They have problems with the supply chain and Brexit and all
Brexit and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
The books come from England.
Yeah. No, that's great, and that's brilliant. It sounds really good. Like, I can't wait to get my hands on it myself. So that's brilliant.
It's a bit different.
Yeah. And do you want to tell the listeners why did you you kind of do it in America? Why did you put it out there in America first? Or
I suppose it goes a while back. Like, my brother-in-law lives in Miami, and we went we sort of go to America every second year before the pandemic.
Yeah.
But I remember being there and kind of really getting immersed in the culture. We've traveled a bit around America, myself, my wife, my son, been to California, been to Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, been to Arizona, various other places.
Great, yeah.
And I love the kind of just the openness of the culture, the kind of the possibility anything could happen there. As a setting, it's just a wonderful place as a setting, because it has just that diversity and eclectic quality. But it's also a country that has a really, really troubled past, and of course, what really sort of provoked this book and America was that I have a really good friend who lives in Oklahoma. He's a poet. His name is Ron Wallace, and any of your listeners into poetry, ronwallacepoetry.com. He has a gift for language that I envy. He's stunning poet, all about landscape and history and that. But he's because he's educated, he's a Democrat, and he was obviously troubled with what happened in 2016, and we began speaking about sort of Trump's America, and as it sort of snowballed into the absolute mess that sort of culminated with January 6th last. And he gave me some really good insights into America and kind of what was going wrong with it and so on. And I just thought that those ideas sort of germinated into the story. And I'm not saying my book is political; it's not at all. But it does sort of explore some of the sort of the underbelly, touches on ideas like racism and again that idea of how good people are turned into, turn against one another. And a good portion of the book as well is told in flashback and sort of is told sort of nostalgically, sort of focusing on the 1970s and this, the main character's childhood, 70s and the 80s. And I think there's a great sort of yearning for the past in America, which is partly a good thing and maybe partly not a good thing. So I just think it's an amazing place and an amazing setting. Like I think sometimes writing about Ireland, when you write about Ireland, there's an Irishness to it that I don't particularly like. At least not something I'm particularly interested in writing about. I like when writers use it and when they do it, but I just don't think it doesn't work for me. I prefer to, set things far away, because then I can claim that I'm not actually writing about anyone I know.
No, that sounds great. I love the way you're kind of using like going back kind of history as well. So that sounds really really cool. Like that's brilliant, Rob, because I love the way you've done your homework. Like you've got a friend that lives over there as well. So do you think that kind of inspired you a bit with writing the book?
Yeah, well, absolutely. Like, and as you say about homework, like I do my research, I made sure that everything was as accurate as it could be, even to the point of, and I also another thing, I like the way that they use language, the Americans use language, the way they speak, and I tried to capture that about it as much as I could. And it got published, so somebody likes it.
Right stuff.
I must have done a half decent job.
No, that's great. Well done. I hope it does really well for you. Hope it does really well for you. Yeah. So, as you said earlier on, the book will be available in Dewberry Books in Blackrock. What other bookshops have it in stock, Rob?
Well, because I'm with a small publisher and I don't have any kind of openings on this side of the world, I have to do a lot of that sort of myself. I've approached my local bookshop, which would be Eason's in. I live in Glasnevin, so Eason's in the Omni and Santry, and they've yet to get back to me. But I understand it's hard. Like Dewberry are selling my book because I work near Blackrock, and great. The manager thinks it's kind of a local interest story, and they might get some sales out of it, but hopefully. It's very hard without, like, I don't have an agent. I'm not with a big company, and getting your book into the, like, one thing I've learned since we've been doing this process of getting the book out there, like I spent the whole of last summer editing, which was like having homework. Like seriously, it was 5, 6, 7, 8 hours a day. Like sitting, rewriting, drafting, and just sort of going, what? Because my editor, he lives in California, so like I'd be starting at 9 o'clock in the morning here. I'd be finished by 4 o'clock, sending it to him so that his day would start at 9 o'clock in California, and he could. And we did this process relentlessly for the entire summer, and then once it was finally done, and I kind of thought, then it was, listen, Rob, we'll get your book out there. We'll do all the rest. But listen, you have to get endorsements from other writers. You've got to go out there and see where you can sell it. Get yourself a social media presence. Blah 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 blah. All of this kind of stuff. And since then I've been working 2 jobs.
Good. No, it is tough.
You know yourself, like you're a writer yourself, and like you know the editing process is grueling.
Yeah, it is. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, I hear you. I can understand. I know exactly where you're coming from, Rob. But have you always been a writer yourself? Have you always written?
Yeah, like I've a bit of a confession. I don't mind telling this to however many thousands or whatever, hundreds of thousands of listeners you have. But I when I was 12, for Christmas, rather than get the usual whatever it was back then, I asked for a really nice ballpoint pen and a hardback book, copybook, and I spent my entire Christmas holidays writing fantasy stories in the kind of the J.R.R. Tolkien kind of style. Like I was really big into that, and and like a couple of months later, I'd filled an entire 120-page copybook of this, nonsense story about elves and wizards and dragons and all that kind of thing. But that was the start. Like, and I did a lot of, as a teenager, did a lot of sort of that kind of writing, and then I started writing poetry in a kind of meaningful way. Like, I'm sure you in your teen years had the same kind of confusing emotions and just what's the world about, and you wrote these awful poems, and I'm sure you wrote the occasional sort of love poem about some girl that you fancied who didn't know you existed, and you just wrote all your misery onto the page. Well, yeah, I wrote plenty of them. So I wrote poetry well into my 20s and even into my 30s, and I published a poetry book in 2006 called Beneath the Waves, which it did okay, and it was nice to get out there, get my poems out there, get my writing out there. But I started, and then I wrote some one-act plays, so I tried a bit of everything really.
Stuff, yeah.
But for the last, in 2008, I started writing my first proper novel, which was, I don't know, did you ever read Flann O'Brien?
I haven't really come across that now.
No. I'd Swim Two Birds, The Third Policeman. He Irish writer, but like mad as a brush, like very, very, very funny, very zany. And like his books are written in the 50s and 60s, and like quite sort of surreal. I love his writing, and I kind of wrote a book about, modeled kind of loosely on how Flann O'Brien writes, and that was a practice book. And then about 5 years ago, I wrote a detective novel, and then I wrote another one. And I thought, the second one, I thought this could go somewhere. This is actually not a bad book. That was the first book that I wrote, and I kind of thought I really had something here.
Right.
And of course, sent it out, and thanks, but no thanks. This book's not right for us at the moment, and all that kind of stuff. And came back. And then in 2018, I started Jonestown. I wrote it in a furious summer. I wrote the first draft just about 12 weeks, just lashed it out, and it was rubbish. But the kernel, the story, the shape of the story was there, and I fixed it up and sent it off and got the same kind of rejections and so on. And then. Well, look, it's sometimes the ones, like sometimes when you get the rejections, and they have these lovely polite ones which are like this is not right for us. It's really interesting, and we and they try to give you a pat on the back while shoving you out the door at the same time. I sent it off to an agent, some English fella, but he sent it back to me and said, "Please don't email me with any writing again." And I thought, okay, seriously, must have got him on a bad day. But the company who published it, Sulis, they just their motto, I suppose, or part of their ideology is that. They want to publish books that they think are good, that conventional publishers won't take a risk on. And their idea, like what I've learned through dealing with them, is that, and this kind of advice to writers out there who are writing, is that the big publishing houses have a formula. They have something, like they have an idea of what they want and
Yeah.
how it's to sound and how it's to look and who's the market. And if you're looking to sell a book to, you know, one of the big five, you better be damn sure that you can sum up your book in a sentence and that you know exactly who your target audience is. Because if you send it off to an editor, don't have these really, really clear about that, doesn't matter how good it is. Their bottom line is, can we sell it? And to sell it, they need to know to whom they're selling it, and they need that kind of, you know, clear kind of soundbite, as it were.
You know, that's great advice for anybody, Rob. That's brilliant. Like fair play to you for persevering, like, you know, and then you do get your book published. So that's great. That's a great success story. And when he did get the nice letters back, did you ever think of self-publishing? Did you ever think of going down that road?
You know, I did. I did for a while, and like I don't have you know, anybody who self-publishes, like anybody who publishes, it doesn't matter whether self-publishing, conventional publishing, whatever. It's all good. Anybody who puts their words, their art out there, to be in many cases, you know, it's quite a you make yourself very vulnerable by doing it. It's not easy to do. But anyone who does that has my respect. I was looking at self-publishing, and then I'm not very tech savvy, and I just kind of thought, oh, formatting, all this kind of thing, and I just thought, oh, that sounds like hard work, and I just kind of put it on the back burner. Now, to be honest, had I not managed to get accepted by Sulis, I don't know what I would have done. I don't know what I'd be doing right now. But I did kind of think, you know, I'd got so many rejections with Jonestown, like north of 40, like probably 50, that I kind of just thought, you know what, I might just pack this in. I might just sort of, I've had enough of it. I've given it a try, and I just, you know, I just hadn't got the heart. But you know, it got picked up, and now I'm working on a follow-up. Well, not of Jonestown, but a second book. So we'll see how it goes, you know.
Yeah, no, the best of luck, and make sure you send on all the links to your books as well, so I can share them on the show notes. I think you already have, so rest assured I'll put them on the show notes for you. Because they sound really good. So, can I just ask you as well, in your writing as well, like, just say for instance, have you kind of ever hit a metaphorical wall, let's say, like, or got a block, and how would you have handled that yourself, Rob?
Yeah, I have. I think we all do. Like I certainly got, you know, there's two types of block. There's the one block where you actually can't write, where you hit that wall. I've never really hit one of them badly. But I have hit the block where everything I write is utter rubbish. You know, it's just awful. And like you know, you can't, even if you're supremely generous to yourself, you just go, oh, this is just awful. And in a way, that's kind of worse. What I do when I hit that, or when I've hit, as I said, I've never hit a really big wall, but when I think the reason I have never hit that kind of wall is that I write when when the mood takes me. I'm not kind of like Stephen King, who I have great admiration for his work ethic. He writes 2,000 words a day, and his suggestion to any writer is do about 1,000 words a day. And when I have a flow, I do, but I'm not going to force something. I'm not going to write if I'm not in the humor for it. And you know yourself, like, you know, with life the way it is and the busyness of life, snatching 5 or 10 or 15 minutes here and there to write is a good thing. And, you know, if you can do that, but I suppose, don't force it. Yeah. Because if you force it, this podcast say things like, you know, get through it however you can, whatever way you do get through it, just as long as you can get through it. As Winston Churchill said, when you're going through hell, keep going.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's great advice. That's really good advice. I actually really good you made, Rob. There, really, really good.
Cheers.
And how do you keep yourself motivated as well, Rob? How do you kind of keep yourself motivated in your writing?
I'm always motivated as long as I have a good story.
Yeah.
As long as I've got something to say, I think that is the motivation in itself. As I said, I'm not the kind of, in terms of the work ethic, I don't have this kind of, I write for 2 or 3 hours a day, every day. I don't have that. But if I've got a good story, that's what keeps me going. And sometimes it could be, as I said, I'm working on a novel right now. But I think sometimes for a bit of a change of gear, I will occasionally write a short story. That's what sort of, as I said, when the story hits you and the right time to tell it, you just go there, get it done. And I don't know about you, but I certainly have a nagging voice in my head that says to me, oh, you should be writing this. You should be writing this story. You should be. And that's kind of what, I won't say I'm motivated as much as I'm kind of nagged into writing in some cases.
Yeah. Because that's funny you should say that, because I was going through a stage, I was writing about like a couple of 100 words a day. And it was going fine for me. And then all of a sudden, over the last few days, just wasn't happening. So that's really good advice that you've given me and for the listeners as well, because, don't put too much pressure on yourself. If it's not working out one day, just leave it alone. Then wait for the inspiration to come. Would that make sense?
Absolutely. I think, as I said, usually if you force it, what comes out isn't great.
Yeah.
But whatever works for you. But I think if you do hit a time when stuff isn't going well, just leave it alone. Just do something else. Go back. I think another thing as well is go back to the kind of things that make you happy. Sort of, if you unclutter the mind, that could be, watching a movie, listening to music, going for a walk, playing with the kids, playing with the dog, just getting away from it, because there's enough pressure to write without, in the writing itself, without feeling that, that external pressure, without having that internal pressure as well. So just, in the words of Elsa, let it go.
Brilliant, yeah. But no, that's great. And during lockdown, how did you find the experience in lockdown? With your writing, did it affect you in a good way, or did it have any kind of?
Do you know what I did? I think I might have written half a dozen short stories during lockdown.
Brilliant.
And I kind of sent a few to competitions, and I think I got 1 or 2 published in online magazines. But what I did during lockdown, because it was such a weird time. It was this, I don't know how to describe it. It was like somebody hit the pause button, but at the same time, do you remember? Because you and I probably have a similar age. But do you remember back when you had your VCR in the olden days, and you hit the pause, and the picture was kind of doing this little dance?
Yeah.
That's what, that's what lockdown felt like to me. It was like you were stuck, but you were still doing a bit of a little jig,
Yeah.
Just crazy. What I did was I started drawing, and if you look at the cover of Jonestown, I drew that.
Yeah, it's really cool. That's really good. Yeah.
The picture. So what I did was I started using oil pastels, and like you do this rubbing and shading and kind of, with oil pastels, and then you draw on top of it with a really heavy pencil. So I just started drawing them, and my wife going mad because there was these pictures appearing on the walls of the house everywhere, just these A4 pages that I had drawn and just stuck up there. And she was like, I wouldn't dare claim to be an artist of any kind, but I could always draw a little bit, and I just thought, I've got the time, I'm gonna have a bit of fun with this. That gets me through exercise, reading, but I didn't do much. I didn't do a lot of writing during lockdown. I don't know why
Okay.
my head wasn't in the right place.
Yeah, no, yeah, just no, it's just interesting how because different people had different experience of it, didn't they?
Mm.
Yeah,
Yeah, no,
yeah,
absolutely.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
actually, I did do one thing that just worth making a mention of. Um, I collaborated on a book called Lights on the Horizon.
Very good.
A guy up north, Andrew Timmy, is a writer, and he put a sort of a call out to other writers, to sort of poets, writers, everything, to create a piece, to create a sort of an anthology, with the view of selling it, and the proceeds, the profits, going to the frontline workers.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, very
And
good.
and yeah, and we did well. We sold quite a few copies, called The Horizon. But I wrote a short story for that about sort of a day in the life of an ambulance driver,
Oh, very good.
um,
Yeah.
and about how, because he was dealing with sort of COVID patients, that he had to be sort of quarantined within his own house, and how he missed his own family, and you
Mm.
know. But if you're looking to support a good cause, Lights on the Horizon, and you'll be able to find it. I think I'm not sure what bookshops it's in, but you'll definitely be able to find it online.
Oh, great,
Um,
great. Yeah, I'm sure
and it's
I'll
it's
get for I for one will get one of them. Like, but I'm sure the
yeah.
listener will buy that. That's great. Well done. That's
Yeah,
brilliant.
no, it's a
Yeah,
brilliant anthology. It's a
yeah.
good sort of
Mm.
coffee table size book. It's a good
Okay.
thick
Yeah,
hardcover book. Now, it's not cheap, but then again,
yeah. It's a
it's
great cause.
it's going to a good cause. And
Yeah. And a
you
lot of
know, if
people
you're
could
not if you're
relate
not
to what you've written. Sorry, a lot of people could
well,
relate to.
no,
So, yeah,
absolutely. Like, and the stories in it and the poems in it are written by ordinary people like ourselves, and
yeah,
they all relate to a COVID experience. It's got a
yeah.
lovely sort of visual quality, and it
Mm.
was endorsed by none other than Louise O'Neill and Jeremy Irons.
Okay.
They gave it a plug, so it had some serious heavyweight backing.
Yeah, geez, that's great. Well done.
Yeah,
That's brilliant. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, we'll have to have a look for that. Like maybe if you want to send it to me as well, I can put it on the show notes for people to find. If you
yeah, yeah,
that'd be great. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. Of course, I
And
can do that.
yeah. And have you ever got interested in narrating your books, like as audio books? Have you thought about that?
Well, I don't particularly think I have a good reading voice. It's my voice is too nasal for that. I'd rather, somebody with a nice, deep, resonant voice, reading. But not really. I like, the voice
Mm,
work stuff is
yeah,
such an incredible skill.
I heard that. Yeah, yeah,
Um,
mm,
not for me.
yeah,
I couldn't do it.
yeah,
But I suppose, like, depending on how things go with the book,
yeah.
there is an option to do that.
Yeah,
And
that's more
the
really what
public,
I meant. That's what I'm sorry
yeah,
for. I like
no,
to
no,
make it as an audio book kind of. Sorry, yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
no. The publishing house have a couple of audio recorders,
Mm,
or
yeah,
sorry, voice artists
yeah, yeah,
on their books, and the option is there. But so we'll see how it goes first.
yeah, yeah. Brilliant. No, the best of luck with it.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Because
yeah,
no, just they seem very popular at the moment. A lot of people like the audio books, don't they?
yeah. Well,
Yeah, yeah,
one of the things I that as you said, that got me through lockdown as well, is listening to podcasts.
mm,
And like, podcasts for sure have sort of become a
very
feature of,
popular. Yeah,
I suppose. I suppose it's a middle-aged thing, isn't it?
yeah,
you know, you put on the headphones and you go off and you take the dog for a walk. But I have a huge interest in U.S. politics, and I listen to a lot of podcasts on U.S. politics. But I listen to, I also listen to, oh God, I don't know how many. I must have 20, 30, 40 podcasts, on my list, and I listen to about 4 or 5 regularly, but I will dip into them. I
yeah.
just
They're great.
love listening. I love listening to people talk.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
I love listening to smart people share ideas,
Mm,
and just the sound of how people use language and
mm,
tell stories.
yeah,
You know,
yeah. Yes, yeah, that's
it's
great. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that's no, that's brilliant though, because that's how I got interested in doing these podcasts as well for
Mm.
yourself and anybody that's listening. There's a really good one called "Changing Minds" by Alan Fitzpatrick.
Okay.
It's a really, he goes through a multitude of subjects, like, and he kind of got me interested in doing this kind of thing myself. So it's well worth checking out. Well worth checking out.
I made a note of there. Changing Minds, Owen Fitzpatrick.
Yeah, it's very good.
Yeah,
very good.
no, I'll have a listen to that. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And just one or two more questions, if that's okay.
Sure.
Do you know when you're writing, would you listen to any music when you're writing yourself?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I like, and I like I grew up listening to I suppose all kinds of music. My father, a huge fan of like Gilbert and Sullivan operettas, and I grew up with that kind of stuff. And then my mother, big fan of Johnny Cash and all that. The kind of music, like, I was a teenager in the mid to late 80s, and indie music and guitar music has always always been my thing. So I grew up listening to Sonic Youth and Pixies, and then those kind of bands. And that's what I play. I like usually fast-paced kind of indie rock music is what I listen to, and quite loud when I'm writing, and it just sort of channels that energy, it's there in the background. Like even though there are lyrics and words in the songs, I don't hear them. I just hear this noise, and it kind of compels me to type quicker. Doesn't mean the writing is any better, but it's more, it's just a good way of sort of, as I say, all the distractions are gone. I can focus on what I'm doing.
That's great, because it's funny that, because a lot of people have different kind of music they listen to when they're writing. Like some people wouldn't have lyrics whatsoever, and other people want lyrics. Like I've only started to write, listen to music, so I'm with you there 100%. It's great. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, I think listen to the music that you like to listen to, and even if it has singing and lyrics, you'll tune it out. You'll tune it, and I guarantee you'll up your productivity. I can't guarantee you'll up your quality, but certainly the word count will increase.
It does, yeah, it really does. I agree with you. Yeah, it's brilliant.
Yeah.
And do you have? I know you mentioned earlier on a bit of an influence, a book you mentioned earlier on, but is there any books that come to mind, one of your favorite books and authors that inspired you?
Yeah, there's the, how long have you got? But I suppose my favorite author, like when I was about 19, 17, 18, 19, I can't remember, but that sort of age, I discovered Kurt Vonnegut, the American satirist.
Oh yeah.
And have you read any of his?
I've heard of him before. I've come across him, but
he just make you laugh out loud. But he also has a kind of a very powerful sort of progressive humanitarian message as well. But his books are madcap zany. Big fan of him, always have been. Big fan of John Irving, another American writer. But his books are like, they're the size of a sliced pan. And they take forever to get through. But,
I love that term.
But at the moment, I read a lot of short stories, and I'm reading. I've just finished the third collection by an American short story writer called Laura Vandenberg, who is just a stunning writer. An amazing sort of exploration of all her characters are women. Most of her stories are told in the first person, but she just is able to weave this tapestry of these amazingly sort of neurotic, fraught, but yet strong characters, kind of right on the verge of some great crisis. And the stories just are so compelling and sort of meticulous detail. Her writing is beautiful. I'd recommend her if you like short stories.
Yeah, that's a great recommend. Yeah, and I must check it out. Yeah, because they are the greatest short stories, and they don't take too much time like to read either. Like
No, that's it. Like a well written short story is such a treat. It's like you remember back in the days when you used to be able to get a bit of time and you could go off for an old pint and read the paper. A short story is the literary equivalent of that, whereas a novel is a bit like going out for a meal, and
Yeah, you touched on I agree with you. Yeah, and you touched on the music a little bit there. Like, do you have like a favorite band yourself? Like, do you like to listen to when you're chilling out?
When I'm chilling out, I suppose there's no one that in particular. I kind of, whatever takes the mood. Like as I said, favorite band is probably Pixies. I like to go to live music when I
Yeah,
can.
missed that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think we all do. I remember hearing it put that somebody, I can't remember who it was, but somebody was asked what kind of music do they listen to, and they said, I listen to all types, but I prefer the stuff that lasts.
Great. Yeah.
And I'd agree with that. Like I can't think of a type of music that I really don't like. Now I don't listen to an awful lot of contemporary music, but each to their own.
Yeah. No, that's great. That's great. And
Yeah.
movies yourself, do you have any favorite movies? This
Yeah.
is a great part of the podcast.
Yeah.
It's got great recommends,
Yeah. I suppose that's the thing, people. Well, like being a child of the 70s and early 80s and that, I'm a big sci-fi fan of the original 3 Star Wars. The 6 that came after, I think the less said out then the better. But and particularly the 3 in the middle, God almighty, I tell you. But look, I've always liked sci-fi, and I always like those kind of that kind of stuff. Movies that sort of really strike a chord with me. I suppose one of my favorite movies, I love the Coen brothers, and my favorite Coen brothers movie is The Big Lebowski.
Great film, great film,
it's such a quotable movie, and it's a bizarre, everybody knows it, and everybody knows the quotes. And like I've a friend who lives in Phoenix in Arizona, and I don't see him very often, but when I do see him, we just basically spend a thing that blokes do of a certain age.
I've got a couple of films like that myself, Ari.
I think we all do. I think we all do. And like, thinking about a movie that really impressed me lately, if you've seen it, and like Quentin Tarantino, who can be a bit hit and miss. Like when he does it well, it's brilliant. I think Jackie Brown is probably his best movie.
Yeah.
But when he does it badly, it's awful. But the Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, I just thought was an absolute treat.
It was a great film. It was very good. Yeah, it was a great film. Yeah, great film.
It just captured the era, like the costume, the attention to detail. Again, the dialogue, which is so sparkling. And like Tarantino and the Coen brothers, what I like for their dialogue is just so incredible. It's so spot on. But yeah, and then I'm looking forward to Dune. Dune is coming out on Friday. That's the Denis Villeneuve. Who did you see? Did you see Arrival, or did you see Blade Runner 2049?
Oh, Blade Runner, great movie.
Yeah,
great movie. Yeah,
but
it's my favorite. Yeah,
but not Blade Runner from not Ridley Scott's Blade Runner, the more recent one.
Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah, it's great.
But that's Denis Villeneuve, and he works with Roger Deakins as his cinematographer, and just the way just the look of the movie is just stunning. So I think Dune, which is a terrific book, albeit it's a bit deep and a bit philosophical, but I'm looking forward to seeing how he manages it, because what's his name? Twin Peaks. Who directed Twin Peaks? The name is escaping me now.
Oh oh god.
Yeah. Slightly quirky, strange director. Yeah. No, I'm just having a complete blank.
Can't think of him either.
But it'll come to me in a second. But he tried to make Dune in the early 80s and made a complete hash of it. We'll have to see how that how it works out. But I hope it's going to be a good sort of a dramatization of the book.
Yeah, that's one to keep an eye out for. All right, yeah, it's coming out on Friday. I must have a look at that.
Yeah. It's I know I've been looking forward ever since I heard that it's coming out. I just thought can't wait for this. So Yeah, fingers crossed.
Yeah. Like Philip K. Dick, he wrote some great books for sci-fi movies, didn't he?
Oh, absolutely. By the way, that director is David Lynch, of course. How
David
could I
Lynch.
forget
Okay.
David Lynch? Yeah, just
Yeah.
Philip K. Dick, who I found out much to my amusement, his fans are called dickheads.
Yeah.
So you might have to censor that out, but yeah, that's they're called. I saw somebody wearing a T-shirt. I was in San Diego some years ago, and I saw somebody wearing a T-shirt that said "I'm a dickhead," and I thought, oh, "Hang on, you know," and they knew. But I was kind of looking at them, going, and says, "No, I like Philip K. Dick's books. Oh, cool, yeah, and like so yeah, Blade Runner that you referred to, do androids dream of electric sheep, which
Yeah.
is, fair warning if you haven't read it. It's very different to Blade Runner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's but he was such a talented writer and had he had such a hard life though. He had a
He
really
did.
tough
Yeah.
life. Like there's a lot of tragedy in his life.
And he didn't really reap the rewards when he was alive either,
No, and
No.
a lot of sci-fi writers that happened. Like a lot of sci-fi writers never made any inroads or success or any money, but yeah, they churned out those books.
Big time, yeah. No,
Yeah.
this has been absolutely great, Rob. I really appreciate you coming on the podcast. Absolutely brilliant. So just one more question before you go, if that's okay. Just if you could give people advice to keep themselves motivated in their writing, in these hard times, what would you say yourself if you could kind of have a sentence or to keep from your experience?
Yeah, well, I suppose in terms of motivation, find the story that only you can tell and write that, and search deep for it and find it and tell it, and it will find an audience. But in terms of sort of, again, work habits, those kind of things, there's been, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands, God knows, probably even a million books written about writing and how to do writing and all that kind of thing. And I've read a fair chunk of them. But the best advice about writing comes from Stephen King, and it's very simple. If you want to be a writer, you have to read a lot and you have to write a lot.
Yeah.
And if you do both of them, the stuff will come. It will. The ideas will generate, and writing in terms of idea generation is that once you get an idea, and if you get a bit of a flow on that, you suddenly find that you've got more ideas than you've got time to write them all.
Yeah.
And for a writer, that's a good place to be.
Brilliant. Great plan. Yeah. That's brilliant, Rob. Thanks a million for coming on. I really appreciate it.
It's been a pleasure, Mark.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So just, do you want to mention the name of your book for everybody that's listening one more time, Rob?
Yeah, it's Jonestown, and
Jonestown.
it's published by Sulis International Press. You can get it on Book Depository. That has free delivery, so I tend to send people there first. Great. But if you want to get, it's also Kindle, those kind of things. But I'd very much appreciate people's support, and if you do buy it and you do like it, a review would also be much appreciated.
Yeah.
And if you don't like it, you can contact Mark if you're looking for a refund.
Very good. I like it. Very good. But no, I'll be out of the country that week. If you for a year or two.
You've narrowed it down to a week. Good man.
Yeah. But thanks a lot, Rob. I wish you all the best in your future writing, and make sure you send me on all the links and I can put them on the show notes.
Will do, Mark. And listen, you keep success with your writing, and I hope your journey is a successful one too.
Cheers, Rob. So that was Rob McDermott, everybody. Thanks a lot for tuning into today's podcast. So I really hope you're enjoying these podcasts. So if you like them and share them. So have a great week, and we'll talk to you on Thursday for another podcast. Take care. Thank you.